So let me try and take you to the demo board and just introduce our two speakers for today, who will be Philip Gennoy and Surinder Kuna. So I'll give you some background as I start to set this up. I've known Philip for since he was in short trousers. No, it's probably about since we started the innovation program. So it's probably about 5 years. Is it right, Philip?
10.
Is it longer? 10.
Feels
It's 10
like,
years.
no,
It feels
yeah,
like
yeah,
10.
it is. It's 10 years, yeah.
Is it 10 years? Okay. And I have to start by saying when I met Philip, I was absolutely amazed and impressed. Philip, don't let your head get too big. I work, as you know, all around the world. I've worked with people from lots of different functions, and often people within human resources are very, very sensible, are very structured and organized, and the things they don't do is stick their neck on the line too often. And that's what I discovered Philip was doing, because Philip had taken on the role of within Allianz driving innovation, bringing it to life and making it happen. And the first meeting we had was in our office in London, in Burt Lodge, and I was amazed by his energy and his focus. And then we got a chance to work together, first with his innovation champions, starting the process, helping to structure the way in which they learn tools and methods. And it's been a lovely journey. So that's how I've met Philip, and that's the background. Surinder, I met more recently. Surinder is very impressive. She's got a high-tech background. She's worked with Allianz. She's worked in defense. She's very much been part of the process of embedding innovation into a culture at Allianz. Now, the last thing I'll say about Allianz is it's an insurance company. And if you understand that, that means it employs intelligent, sensible people who are often risk averse. So with that introduction and the fact that we're going to learn a lot about HR really driving a process at the top table, I'm going to ask you to join me at view presentation. And if that's okay, then Philip and Surinder, I'd ask you to just make a start and take us on your journey.
So I think, thanks, Eddie. Thanks for the introduction. A couple of things I took from that is I'm not sensible, structured or organised, but I do have energy and focus. So I think that I'll take. And in terms of the hopes and fears, I think I've heard a lot of people wanting some ideas. Hopefully you'll get that from us. I think we have a very practical kind of story here. And what I would want in this is that there's a few things that you think, that was quite a nice idea or a nice thing that I'm very happy to talk about in more detail in the questions or discuss later. The other thing is it's a journey of discovery for us all on QUBE, and I'm not to be boring, and if I am, I'm sure there's a QUBE room that I'll be moved to so that you can get on without me. So to the first slide and the timeline, I think, can you see this slide okay? Am I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think the first thing I would say here is that we decided as an insurance company, as a sort of place where perhaps we weren't the natural sort of hotbed of innovation and ideas, that was something culturally we wanted to change. That was, I think, one of the reasons it came down to HR to own. And we very much started with a premise that this was something we felt for the whole organisation rather than a specific group or a collection of individuals. And I remember those first conversations with Eddie that he referred to, and there's a couple of bits in that which I think really informed our journey all the way through. And this is some of the material that I know Pentacle have and use regularly. The first one was we kind of cascaded ideas into two particular types. The big things, the big sort of breakthrough, whether it's in underwriting, whether it's in product, whether it's a new marketing, a new IT application, the big things, the big breakthrough ideas. And then the other thing, which actually was probably even more, and in percentage terms would be 90% of what we were wanting, was the ideas that everybody in the organisation had every single day of their lives, could see better ways of doing things, and it was a way of getting those out. So that was, I think, quite important from the beginning for us. And then the other thing that was quite important, and I was talking before we started, but of thinking that this was something that everybody could get involved in, is identifying that in the innovation process, different people play different parts. So some people, yes, have ideas. Some people have more ideas than others. But some people can make ideas happen. Some people can knock down barriers and get ideas to implementation. Some leaders can give permission or they can block. And it was some way of identifying that in the whole, if we were going to change the organisation, everybody had a part to play, and identifying that all of those parts were important. So it's very important to come up with an idea. It's equally important and often more difficult to bring that idea through to something that we actually see in the business. So this first slide will identify, some of the steps along the way, and I think a few sort of things to take out from it. Firstly, we put a dedicated team of 5 people to give it some focus across the organisation. That has served us through now a decade, and we're now reaching the point where that team, as a central support team, is almost no longer needed. That is a team that Surinder has led the last 4 years. And we also decided that we would have champions in each and every area of people who really get this, have got a lot of energy and focus, or in other places there would be a leader who gave their part of the business permission or time to invest in this journey. So those are, I think, a couple of the things from the first slide. And then to move on to the next slide, if I could. I think this slide has been useful for us is in informing our journey, if you like. So we're an organisation of over 5,000 people. We have 25 locations. We have 500 managers all leading their own teams. So this was a very good way of sort of informing our journey and acting as a compass as we've been going through this last 10 years. So at the beginning, we were very kind of unaware. We started at a place where, in lots of parts of our organisation, innovation was seen as unnecessary or a distraction. It was seen as something others did. And we've moved along. And what's been very helpful is that different parts, and I'm sure, you will recognise this, different parts of the organisation are actually in different places here. So what we'll have is we collectively now think that we're moving to the far right of this chart, but along the way we've had parts of the organisation that have been there for some time and parts that we've still been developing and dragging along even in the last few years. So I think those 2 charts were a good sort of introduction. Surinder, is there anything that you would bring out that maybe I haven't from that?
No, I think the neat thing about the program has been that we might have started by teaching people about processes, but in the latter years we've very much focused on a culture and that integrating it into the business and making it really link strategy of why we should be innovating. So the point at which you get from doing things to being innovative is when you get all 3 of those things working together: the tools and techniques, having a culture that says this is what we should be doing, and also the strategy that says why you should be doing it.
Yeah, and I think then to the next slide, and then sort of open this up for discussion and questions, is it's very useful, I think, to look at this and think, where are we as an organisation? So, and where are we in the different parts? And I think back to a point at the beginning of making it something that everybody needs to live and do to get it into the DNA of the organisation. So if that's people doing different things in having ideas and bringing them to fruition, equally it's about people feeling that it's expected of them rather than this is something that you can opt in and opt out of. So I think those were really important for us from the beginning. They've served us well, and along the way this has acted like a compass to remind us of the stages that we're at and where we need to go. So I think it's a good point to stop. let people sort of discuss that first bit, whatever you want to sort of talk about more, and perhaps think about where you are at the moment in terms of, your organisation.
Does anyone want to ask Philip anything or any comments before we go back into the big group?
Yeah, Philip.
I'm wondering
Sorry. I just wondered, you said that you would ask everybody to get involved. Would you always respond, or would somebody always respond to all of the ideas that were put forward?
Yes, I mean, we'll look in a minute at some of the, we had to do some structural things to help. And one of the things that we, did at the beginning.
Oops.
I think bandwidth just died. He'll be back in a second.
He'll be back in a second.
There he is.
Surinder,
Perhaps Surinder
maybe
might be able to answer the question. Yeah.
Yeah, so there are structural things, and the next few slides, Philip will be going through some of the activities in terms of process and systems that help. So what was really important was to give everybody a voice, and we do have an idea management system. What we had at the beginning was a more basic idea management system, and we would run campaigns that were quite broad challenges that asked everybody to participate. But what we had was, we have a structure, and I think Philip mentioned it in one of the first slides, where we had innovation champions in all of the teams or all of the locations, and they would take responsibility with their local management about responding to the idea givers, as well as working out how to take the ideas through to implementation. So that aspect is actually an engagement aspect as well, because the importance of giving people a voice is a very important part of the programme. So Philip will be talking about it a bit more in the next few slides, and then we can discuss it afterwards in terms of the detail.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Surinder, thanks. And yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think that bit at the beginning of making people feel that their ideas were important was hugely key in making this something that was there for everybody.
Okay, great. So should we all...
Any other questions?
Yep. Any more questions? Or should we just press on and maybe go back to questions afterwards? Would that be okay? So if we could all go to the place called View Presentation. So right hand side under Places, just click on where it says View Presentation. Okay, if you're not, we will help you to get there. So, okay, so just next slide. There you go.
So I think, I mean, just a couple of things I would say about this slide. Again, it's kind of informed our journey. We do think we've moved to the right-hand side. But against that, we also think, there are some things that we're really good at, and there are some things that we're still not where we need to be. So it's not like we're everything. We're already everything that's required in being, or we've passed doing. There are still some pieces where we think we've work to do, and you can see again that's really helpful from a kind of compass point of view. And it's also very useful for teams as well. I then turn over to the next one, because I think this covers a number of the questions that have been coming up, and discussion we were having between the bits of the presentation. So I think at the beginning, we had to do a number of things to kind of get this off the ground, and we had to frame the thing. We were having a discussion in the break of what are some of the blocks to innovation, and it's not that people don't want to do this. It's very hard to confront an organisation, but we identified it was something we wanted to change. So I remember Eddie facilitated a session where we literally brought the top 100 people together, identified the challenge, and then they came up with some things that would kind of help move it on. They needed to believe, and they needed to stand behind this. We needed to out the behaviours that sort of didn't do it, and we needed to be able to have that conversation. And I think one of the things that was quite interesting at the time, we were seen to be an organisation that wasn't innovative. And I remember we looked at some of the ones that were, and I always remember Pret a Manger was seen as an organisation that was incredibly innovative. And we went to look at it, and it's a coffee sandwich outlet with plenty of stores. And I think one of the things that I always remember from going there with some of our senior managers is the line managers, the leaders in that business, had incredible freedom, and yet that business prescribed to the nth degree to how many shakes of a pepper pot you would make a sandwich. And it was, they were so prescriptive about their core part of their business, to the point that if you didn't make the sandwich in that way, you wouldn't last. But they had incredible kind of innovation and a feel that anybody could get involved. And I think one of the things from that is focusing innovation where you wanted it to be, again, as a way of starting it off. So you'll see from this chart, we had a system, we had an idea management system, which certainly helped people put their ideas down and people pick them up, to the point just made, that managers had to, and they were noticed if they didn't respond in a certain amount of time. And we also tracked, I think it's to the bunny hop model, how long it took from an idea to get from A to Z, and the different stages. We had the champions, we've spoken about those. We rewarded people, we put in an annual awards event. That event still runs today. Surinder's been looking after it the last few years. It's enormous in our business. It makes a huge impact. And it was seen to be something that we'd never done before. So it recognised the people who really did put their head above the parapet. We had a lot of comms on this, and I think the other thing that we started to build is sort of behavioural stuff into processes like development courses and recruitment. And then on an external level, I think we created an organisation that was prepared to look at other companies and learn, rather than think it had all of its own answers. So I think this slide really is really important. A number of those things were key to getting us started. If we turn to the next slide, I think we kind of, again, the whole management system, we had campaigns, so very visibly for the first few years we had campaigns that were sponsored at a senior level, where we would go out and ask the whole organisation for ideas that quite often would have seemed to be the domain of one particular division or area. And then over time, what happened was that local areas would use that tooling for themselves. So they would just run campaigns whenever they wanted it. And I mean, I notice a lot now, again, Surinder, you might comment here, but I mean, we're an organisation that run pulse surveys on pretty much anything all the time. So somebody just wants to say, well, how is our wellbeing offering being taken up? What do people think of our new motor insurance product? They'll ask that question, and they'll get 1,000 or so responses regularly. And I think this kind of approach created that level of engagement in the organisation. And then finally, I would say to the sort of last slide, again, some of the same things, but you can see you build this journey up over time. So I think it is important that each and every year you're progressing, and that enables you to move a long way over time. But you can't suddenly start 7 years in and put things that you think are a good idea. So I think it's a lot about, you need small steps at the beginning to get going. So that was what I would add. Surinder, sorry, I've mentioned a couple of times, if there's anything in your site that you would think I've not covered or to highlight.
No, I think the beauty of the change in the idea management system was that it was a tool that was very simple for people to use. So if you look at all the systems that people have to use day to day, the only way the idea management system becomes successful is if it's engaging. So very easy to log ideas and share ideas, and also control it to run local campaigns. The shift that we have now, because we've been trying to integrate innovation into other things, is to maybe not emphasize the use of that so much, but have it as a way that we're working with other projects as well, or to integrate it into other collaborative software that we're using for the whole of the business. So at the moment that system runs very well, it's very engaging, but the longer term plan would be to integrate that further.
Brilliant.
So I think those are a few things from the story. Clearly we can take questions, but I think we thought that this would be a good time to sort of ask a bit of a question around, so who does this in your organisation, and whose responsibility is it? A bit sort of taking us back to that session we had out in I think it was Oxford at the time with you, Eddie, and we asked that question exactly to our managers, and most of them pointed at somebody else, I remember. By the end of the day, we'd got a different answer coming out of them, which was extremely helpful.
Philip, can you do me one other question, which is, I mean, for me, the thing which is always amazing is the fact that HR has led this innovation. And often you get situations where, especially with HR people, they find it difficult to be on this sort of strategic agenda and at the front of the decision making. I mean, innovation is basically building the future of the company. So can you tell us a little bit, and we're all friends together, about how you personally manage the relationships, etc. Some of the things which you did personally, which maybe some of the HR people here might find useful.
I think I probably brought what you said at the beginning. I brought focus, I brought energy. I think some of what we've done here are consistent with things like our promotion of corporate social responsibility, our promotion of customer centricity. We've kind of, over the years, you need to, adapt and build capabilities in the organisation. So I think I was good at getting around the organisation. I mean, clearly that's a HR job. I was good at engaging people to the premise that it was everybody's responsibility. I was a key place for that, and I don't have any hidden agenda. I say it as it is. So I think some of what happened at the beginning defined the fact that it would stay as my role. I think along the way, that's been questioned plenty of times, and over the journey, more and more of that has got into the business. We feel the business is comfortable, and the leadership team can take it on, because at a point in time, as we've said, it ceases to be anybody's responsibility. It then is really the responsibility of every leader, every person in our business. So that's sort of where it is. But where it needed a push, I was probably seen as a good person to take it on with perhaps nothing else to do for a few years.
I doubt that. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Okay, so just remembering this question that Phil made.
Oh, by the way, Philip, there was a question. Sorry,
Yeah,
there's a question from Marilyn, but she sent us a private text, and the question was, Philip, how did you manage the behaviors of those who were not engaged?
So I think, again, that's a great question, and it's a question people in HR line are, familiar with. So how do you address people who don't engage in whatever aspect? So, at the moment, as a business increasingly regulated, how do we address people who refuse to, engage with compliance? I mean, these are, constant questions. So first is you kind of try and look at why they're not doing it at the moment, because I don't think people deliberately set out not to do what the organisation's asking them to do, and I think quite a lot of things get in the way. People are busy, time, and all that. So a lot of stuff that we did to help the organisation, we kind of make it clear that we were allowing time for this. We were going to reward people on this. It was going to be part of your targets if you did it well, all of that stuff. And then, we gave people a lot of training, development, You know, I remember, again, Eddie, you were part of this. We identified a lot of places and just kept taking people all sorts of different companies to, you know, get them energized. And then at a certain point, you know, when you've tried that enough and people still don't get it, you take them into a little room in the side of QUBE somewhere and you tell them, you know, that time's running out. So, you know, better change. And then with the few that are left, you tell them to go and work for AXA.
Cool, that's awesome.
Sabotage your competitors, lovely.
There is another specific one in there. In the on the timeline, you can see in 2012 we introduced improve and innovate. It's actually a phrase that we use within the business as one of the high performance behaviours. So the way that performance is managed for our people is 50% on a business target and 50% on a behavioural target. And one of the high performance behaviours is improve and innovate. So the way that that's used within the business is some people emphasize its use for certain roles and certain teams more than others. You can't take on board all of the behaviours, but where there's a real focus and requirement. So people's individual performance is dependent on exhibiting those behaviours. So that's quite a tangible way that through the programme it's become a way of measuring performance as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So if we can all go back to the large workshop whiteboard, just so we can discuss that Philip's question about whose responsibility, who's the person, you know, who has to do it, who has to innovate within your organization, who's expected to do that.
Forced other things.
Really sorry, everybody. I know you're having fun. You're getting to feel more comfortable chatting away with your, you know, those people who you've just met who are probably the other side of the world, like me. But I'm more of the time. We have just one more thing to share with you and maybe a couple of questions for Philip. So, Eddie.
Great. Yeah, so Philip, what I wanted to do was you mentioned bunny hops. So I wanted just to show people a little bit about what we did together, so some of the models, and that would probably be quite a good idea, I think, just quickly just to help them put it into context. So
and it's also for Matthew.
What we did was
she wanted to learn something else, you know, hopefully this will be helpful for her.
Oh yes, of course, that was her hope, wasn't it? Yeah, that's
her
right.
Fear, so.
Okay, so let's see. Oh, there you go. So what the model we used early on, and the reason we refer to bunny hops, is when we start, really at the start of the 10 years, we try to get organizations to relax a little bit by telling them that they should think about ideas as if they were rabbits going on a journey from idea to success or idea into money. I think within Allianz, Philip came up with the term I2S. Which was fantastic, and then we do a little quiz where we decide where to start with the champions, and the quiz is basically trying to find out where the bottleneck is in the organization. So is it about creating the opportunity? Is it because you haven't organized yourself to capture and create the ideas? Is it because you don't know the relevance and you don't know what innovation fits into your business, the Pret-a-Manger story? Is it about not getting the people involved? Is it about making it possible, or is it about execution? And that allows us to focus a little bit on where we should start the teaching, because then people are more interested because it's an area they're interested in. So Mathilde, there's a little web link here. If you wanted to do the quiz, you can do the quiz and we'll come back and we'll give you some response and some answers, okay? As part of that, when we do the creating the opportunity, one of the things we do with the ideas management system is we try to make sure that people can actually make sure their ideas work better. And this is the 5-hop model, or the bunny hops, which we were talking about. So really questions which get asked. So there's one question which is, how does it look to us? Will it make any money? Does it fit our strategy? Do the customers really want it? And is this the best thing to do? And again, with Philip's team, they were running this idea of big I, which is the innovations which are for the big strategic things, and little I, which is the ones which Philip described everybody could get involved in. And by running them through this process and making it really simple with the fabulous ideas management system they created, they were very, very quickly able to align everybody. So there are little tools which could go underneath each of these different areas, but we don't really have time. But I will stay after the session. So if anyone wants to ask me more about how we make the rabbit model work, I'm quite happy to just show you, or maybe even teach you one of our performance enhancement tools like the hopes and fears, which you can use instantly. So Philip, I don't know if I did justice or not.
Sounds like a yes.
Yeah. Assume silence means yes, Eddie, I think.
Yeah, okay. So in that case, what we'll do is, first of so what we'll do is, Surinder, if there's anything you'd like to add, and then we're going to just spin quickly and hear final comments, if that's okay.
No, I think if anybody's got any other questions, would be a good time.
Hello?
Hi, Philip.
Yeah. So Philip,
Yes,
we missed part of what you were saying. Sorry.
No, fine. Surinder, you carry on, and then I'll just come in afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, so all those slides are a way of just sort of summarising a 10-year programme, and where we are right now is that the leaders within our business have got responsibility for pushing a relevant agenda. So in some areas they have got bigger challenges, they've got bigger market challenges, and therefore they're looking for the bigger ideas. The small ideas, the continuous improvement ideas, need to be done everywhere, and that's the expectation that we have, that everybody is continuously improving and innovating in the incremental way.
Yeah. And I mean, Eddie, I just in terms of final comment, I think what you summarised absolutely covers how we use those models. I heard a couple of questions in the break about, you know, how do you make sure everybody gets involved? How do you make sure that people who don't have the time get involved? And I just leave with a couple of things again, you know, we did, which at first sight don't sound much, but they were hugely important on this front. The first one was we created a one-page dashboard, which we used for at least 6 or 7 years. That took every division, and divisions then broke it down into, you know, teams, and highlighted how many ideas had been generated, how many had been implemented, how much money they'd made, how many had been blocked, how many had been approved by the managers. And I remember that document, and it was on one page, and it created a league table, and it created a competition. And you don't want to, if the organization says it wants to do anything, then you need something like that, in my view, because you didn't want to sit around the management board table and be repeatedly at the bottom of that chart every time it was produced every month. So I think that was, you know, really important, and it created a sense of competition, and it pulled everybody along. And linked to that, the annual awards event, which we've mentioned, you know, we had 10 awards. We, you know, started out, were we going to make it big? We did. We went to Wembley Stadium when Wembley Stadium was first open. We made it a massive thing. And each of the categories were things that anybody could apply for. You know, something that saved money, something that was an idea that, you know, took a long time to come through, all of that stuff. And it was big. And the process of judging, we made, you know, extremely robust. And if you won or you got nominated, that was a big deal. And again, I think that changed a lot of people in our organisation. And I remember 3 or 4 years in, one of the senior people in our management board confronting me in a corridor and telling me, you know, why has my division not won anything today? And I remember telling him, because, you know, I don't know, read the answer for yourself. 4 years later, his division won 3 or 4 awards, I remember. But that division had changed. And those things, and having them open, fair, transparent, everybody knows the rules, but those and those being visible made a huge difference. So if anything else, I would urge use of that. They're very simple tools, but they do give a degree of visibility, and they do get people involved.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
very much. Thanks, Philip. Thanks, Surinder. So, first of all,